All right. I'm Joe Turner, and this is the City Manager Unfiltered podcast, a podcast for city managers and public sector executives. It is the most influential local government podcast in America, and we have a very unique first-time episode interview series with you that I've been wanting to do for quite some time. On the line with me is Michael Bays with Clear Career Professionals. He is doing the recruitment for Columbia Falls, Montana. They're looking for a city manager. And also on this call, on this podcast, is Mark Shrives. He's the interim city manager for Columbia Falls. And I have the mayor, Donald Barnhart. We are doing something very unique, very different. We are doing a city manager wanted series. And I've been wanting to do this for quite some time, Michael. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to do something new. And I applaud you for doing something a little new and innovative. Why don't you first explain to me why you thought this might be a good idea? I have my thoughts for why I think it's a good idea, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about why you wanted to do the City Manager Wanted edition on the podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Joe, I really appreciate you having me on the podcast again, and just really enjoy following you and the topics that you're covering in the field, and kind of increasing the awareness and professionalism for our entire industry. So, again, thanks for having me. But really, I wanted to include you in this podcast. I think we owe you a thanks for actually this contract we're doing with Columbia Falls. I believe the city had heard about Clear Career Professionals from one of your podcasts, and we were able to submit a proposal to them and really get engaged with the community because of you. And so when you had talked about this idea, I really love the innovative nature of the thought process, and really just reaching a whole new group of candidates. I know the brochures are very useful when we're recruiting candidates, and it's kind of the traditional way to get information out there. But also, it's pretty static, and I know that, people are busy and it's hard to sit down and read a brochure. So I really felt like the podcast is a great way to reach professionals in our industry, and hopefully, make them aware of this amazing opportunity up in Montana.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I really enjoyed working with you in your firm, Michael, because I've actually gone through one of your recruitments and I've heard nothing but positive things about your recruitments from other peers who have gone through your process, is that you are very communicative. You provide good information, timelines. And I know that you obviously want to take care of your client, the city council that hires you, but you also give a lot of deference and appreciation to the needs and concerns of the city manager candidates. So I applaud you and thank you for that. And when I look at the current city manager recruitment process, it's very stale and static when it comes to these brochures and putting up job board postings. And, my position is I want to advocate on behalf of city managers and provide value to them. And I felt like, well, if we can take a brochure and turn it into this living, breathing, comprehensive discussion about the opportunity, I think that gives a lot more value to the candidates, and ultimately that creates a better dynamic for the city and the city council as well. Because at the end of the day, the goal is to find the right city manager who's the right fit for that position, not just get 100 people applying for a job and throwing something against the wall and see what sticks, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is, I think employers don't often understand the impact of a candidate applying for a position, the amount of mental energy that goes into wondering if you're going to advance in a process, or wondering about the unknowns out there. So I think it puts a lot of mental impact on your life. And so I think having that communicative process throughout the recruitment, where the candidate can, feel free to get information, and there's a good flow of adequate quality information going back and forth, really assist the candidate. Having been a candidate ourselves, in not even just government, but I know everybody out there has jobs that they're applying for, and they are suffering the same mental stress. So really, I think just being able to sit down and really understand the mayor and the council up there in Columbia Falls, and just the amazing community, and really understand the partners you're going to be working with, will really be a good way to attract quality city managers to this position.
Absolutely, that's spot on. I wanted to provide more texture, more just sort of detail and flavor for what the opportunity is, because we are in the personal, relationship business. And a lot of our peers, they'll go through a city manager recruitment, they'll make it to the finalists, and they won't get selected. And I say, hey, that's a win, because when you get to the final stage, it's really about a personal fit. Like, are you a good fit for that, for that organization? And are they a good fit for you? Because this is a two-way interview, right? I want to be very transparent to the folks who are listening. I am being paid for this episode. This is a paid promotional spot, so full transparency. But I do think it's going to provide value to the folks who are interested in the position. And obviously, if you are looking to fill a city manager vacancy and you want to do something like this, hit me up. So anyway, Michael, why don't we get into Columbia Falls and tell us a little bit about Columbia Falls? Because I'll be very honest and upfront. I've looked at this opportunity when it went through a couple of recruitments here in the last 6 months, and I gave it a little look because my wife is always kicking me about the idea of going to Montana. She watches Yellowstone, she loves it. She's like, "Oh, it's so beautiful," the whole classic deal. And I've literally thought about applying for Columbia Falls in the past because it's just like it's such a beautiful place. My buddy Ed Meese, he's down in Polson, an hour away. He talks about just how beautiful Montana is and so forth and so on. So why don't you give us a little flavor for the city, and then we'll move into some of the more details.
Yeah, absolutely. We were real excited to get the recruitment up there, and we've had great success in Texas in the city manager field, as you know, and being able to get up to Columbia Falls. When I first arrived, there's some things that are really important, and I'm always kind of looking as a candidate myself. I think a good recruiter is always trying to get the feel for things as if he were applying for the position. So I flew into the airport, which is a nice quality airport in Kalispell, and Columbia Falls is just really really close to that. The thing that struck me from the very beginning is the graciousness of the people in the community. They remind me a lot of Texas in the sense that they're very welcoming and kind and friendly, and people who are genuine, which I think is something that's really really cool. But really, I walked into City Hall to visit with Mark and the rest of the team and mayor and the city council. I took a photo on my phone. It was just the mountains and the backdrop of this amazing place, and it's one of those communities where you can really have an amazing family and really be a part of something that's special. And if you like outdoor activities, man, from kayaking to hiking to fishing, there's just a ton of stuff to do. And so, what I was sitting there thinking is, if I wasn't a recruiter and still in the business, this would definitely be a place that I'd want to work. And then as we visited with the staff and council, I always try to get a feel of, hey, is this somewhere where you can have a positive impact on the community and really demonstrate a legacy for our profession. And the more I met with them and their consistency as a governing body and just kind of their vision for what they want this community to be, I think really sets it apart.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I want to hit an elephant in the room real quick. We're not gonna hide behind anything here. They've gone through a couple recruitments that have gone by the wayside. There's been some interesting developments on the two past recruitments. My understanding is that the first recruitment, the individual accepted the position and then backed out of it a couple of days later, which was unfortunate. And I don't know the backstory on that. And then the second recruitment, they had identified a candidate, and then that person hadn't fully disclosed some issues that became public fodder, and that person subsequently withdrew or something along those lines. Now, I talked to Ed Meese last night, my buddy in Polson. He explained to me, he said, "Hey, Columbia Falls, rock solid, super stable government, super stable council, beautiful community. You have any reason to believe there's any warning flags or concerns about those two recruitments that weren't successful?"
No, not at all. I would like to attribute that a little bit to if you're just reaching out, whether it's a city or a recruiting firm, and you're not getting to know your candidates throughout the process, and you treat it just like a checklist. We're doing this interview, they passed this, and kind of moving forward, but not really getting to know them. I think you set yourself up for these type of things. We've seen it in other cities where candidates get down pretty close to the end and then withdraw from the process. And a good recruiter should know some of those things that are going on with the candidates. And if you know them as people and not just as a product that you're a number that you're trying to push to gain, hey, we got a certain number of candidates here, then I think you understand what's going on there, and those folks are probably able to talk to you a little bit about the processes that are making them either reconsider the position or not. And so I think that's more attributed to the individual candidate and maybe their individual things that are occurring in their life, and then not having a process that gets to really build a relationship with the candidate before you make that final selection.
Yeah, so I want to just from everything I've heard, again, my allegiance is to my peers, my audience. I have not seen any red flags or concern about the past application processes that failed to come to fruition. I think that was a candidate specific issue, not a city or a city council issue. Michael, what's the timeline and process that you're looking at here for this recruitment?
Yeah, well, we're hoping to get the position published, either right before Christmas or right thereafter, and we'll, have a 4 week posting on that where people can submit their resume and cover letter. And we generally move pretty quick as a recruitment firm, so once we get all those candidates in, we'll work with Mark and the city up there, and really, really, I would assume by February, mid-February, late February, we'll have finalist interviews taking place and getting people ready to accept this amazing position.
Yeah, and then you throw in, a 30, 60-day, notification period for a city manager who might be in a current position. You might be looking at late April kind of start date and everything else. And then I believe we'll get Mark on here. Mark Shrives, the interim city manager, in a minute. But then, the budget cycle starts to pick up in earnest, I think, up there. So it's a good time to get in, but you're going to have to get going and get those sea legs under you for sure. Michael, do you know anything about the process for reimbursing candidates for their travel for the interviews, if they're going to be going up there, how that's going to work?
Yeah, well, that's part of our typical agreement with the city is that they'll reimburse candidates for travel to the location for the finalist interviews. We haven't worked it out yet whether they'll pay the expenses for a spouse to attend as well. But those are things we'll work out definitely with the candidates as we're moving forward. I want to say, Joe, one thing that really struck me and I think is going to really help out is the tenure of the staff at this city is pretty amazing. I was visiting with the city secretary, and I believe she's been there for 18 years, and the public works director has been there for a long time himself. And so you just look across the staff, and when I see things like that, I see an amazing opportunity for a manager to come in, but have a lot of that institutional knowledge. I've unfortunately had taken over a couple of cities where I didn't have an extremely tenured staff. They'd been left or been let go before I got there, and lacking that institutional knowledge really has you playing catch up for a long time. But the staff there, like I said, serving a long time kind of shows me something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of green, we talk about a lot of red flags when it comes to dating and relationships or city manager gigs. There's a lot of green flags in Columbia Falls. When I talked to Ed last night, he was telling me that, I think the previous city manager's name is Susan Nicosia. She had been there for 25 years as a city manager. And before that, she worked as the finance director, I believe. And then before that, she was an elected official. So she spent like 25 years with the city manager for the last 13. I think he told me she was a very well respected CPA in the region. So, by all accounts, the organization seems to be run really well, really smooth, not a lot of issues at all whatsoever. At least, I mean, we'll kind of get into that a little bit more in this interview. But there's a lot of green flags when it comes to this organization stability. I believe 5 of the current 7 members of the council have been on since at least before the 2021 election cycle. We'll unpack that a little bit more. The mayor's been with them for a while. So, yeah, a lot of green flags. But, speaking of green, we got to talk about the money, Michael. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? We got show
Yeah.
me the money, right? So,
Yeah.
talk about the salary range for this position, because one of the concerns I would have about this job is housing availability, housing affordability, and obviously compensation. So, can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, and that's a great thing. Mark did a great job of helping coordinate that with the mayor and council as we were meeting and talking about the recruitment for this position. They understand the importance of getting the right professional and making sure that those people are compensated and able to live nearby the community. And they are giving a posted salary range of 125 to 150, and depending on your qualifications and experience. The other really cool thing is they are kind of letting the city manager live outside of city limits as long as it's in a reasonable response time, which really opens up the ability to obtain a little bit more affordable housing. As you know, everybody loves Columbia Falls and wants to live there and move there. And so the competitive nature of the housing market is pretty stiff. So allowing that flexibility for the manager to live, close enough to be able to respond to issues, but outside of city limits will really impact that decision. So I applaud mayor and council for, being able to accommodate, some sort of those things. But yeah, the entire package, I feel like is really great when you look at the quality of life, the school district and the staff. To me, when we really start highlighting this position, it's a great opportunity for a professional manager.
Awesome. Yeah. And have you done do any deep dive? I did a little glance at housing prices in the city, but I haven't had a chance to really look outside the city, so I wasn't sure what kind of expenses we're looking at. But do the prices seem to drop considerably as you head outside the city limits?
Yeah. The prices seem to drop pretty considerably, and the other really cool thing with Columbia Falls is they have a pretty new chief of police that's recently moved to the community and was able to purchase a house outside of city limits, and so I liked that personal experience coming from him, as he said that the ability to live just outside really enabled him to buy a house that met him and his family's needs, and so I really felt like the market just maybe 10 minutes outside of Columbia Falls is 100 or 150,000 less than inside the city. So.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. I applaud the council for being flexible in that because, as you know, one of the residency issues or the residency requirement is an issue. It's a sore spot for me, and it creates a lot of challenges for city managers, obviously, in this environment. So, before we move on to Mark, and I'm going to maybe ask him this as well, but Michael, has there been any discussion about Mark staying on a transitionary period with the new hire and whatnot, or is he available to stick around for, like, say, the budget process if someone's coming from out of the state and they're not familiar with it?
Yeah, yeah, I believe Mark is still available. I don't think. I mean, you can ask him, but I think he's available to help out and as much as needed. And also, I know the retired city manager Susan. I was able to visit with her and just really impressed with all that she's done with the community. But she's also around, and so the really cool thing is there's going to be a couple of resources for the new manager moving in case there's questions or things that they just need a little bit of assistance with.
Awesome. Okay. Well, on that note, we'll turn it over to Mark, and we'll get him in the conversation, and Mark can share some of his experiences and be provide some illumination for our peers since he's sat in the chair. So, Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Sure. Thanks a lot for the podcast, Joe, and Michael. Also, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Mark, why don't you just quickly describe your time of arrival and what you've been up to since you've been in Columbia Falls as the interim?
Happy to tell the story. So I arrived on September 9th, and that was after a call from Susan Nicosia. She and I have known each other for a long time, and she had recommended to the city council that after their other processes they had gone through, she recommended they hire an interim city manager just to help the city keep going and also to work on hiring a city manager. So she called me. I came down and met with the council, and so I came on board on September 9th, and I've been here since. I actually moved down to Columbia Falls. We talked about the fact that I do live in Polson, but it's about an hour and a half commute, so that wouldn't be something that would work on a daily basis. So my wife and I have been here in Columbia Falls since September.
And are you trying to get out by a certain deadline, or are you willing to stay on board? Is the council okay with you being on board for a transition period? Walk us through that right now.
Well, I signed initially a 6 month contract. I think it goes until March 6th. We have talked, and I'm available to stick around longer to help with the transition of a new manager. And it's also nice. You talked, I think, a little bit about Susan, and she, in fact, has contracted back to the city. The city's doing a lot of grants right now, and so she's helping manage those grants. And she's also going to be available. You mentioned the budget process, and she'll be able to assist a new city manager as they go through the budget process. So that's going to be a real help to anyone coming in.
Well, and speaking, I don't know if Susan's going to be on board long term for the grant writing, but we talked a little bit about the property tax and how the localities in Montana are heavily dependent on the property tax. In my conversation with Ed, he informed me that grant writing is a pretty important skill to have because the state, I guess, doles out significant funds through a competitive grant writing process, and it's not necessarily allocated on a per capita basis for the communities. Can you speak to that a little bit more with your experience in the state, or do I got that right?
Well, yeah, I think you do. I mean, the biggest was the infrastructure grant that the city got. It was a $10 million grant. It's to rebuild some streets, replace water mains, put in curbs, gutters, sidewalks. That was a big one. I'm not so much sure it's writing the grants as much as it is managing the grants, because there are companies that you can hire. I know that Susan did a lot of the grant writing, but I think it's more of we need to bring a management of grants in and that kind of a background. Property taxes, that's what cities do kind of survive on, if you will. And that's kind of back and forth with the state. Property taxes have been raised considerably. One thing that in 21, Columbia Falls passed a resort tax, and there's small cities can pass what is called a resort tax. It's a 3% tax. Obviously, Columbia Falls is a resort community, and so the resort tax fit in well, and that has been a really helpful to the city. It's really helped fund our fire and police departments. We've been able to bring on some paid firemen in addition to our volunteer department. We've been able to add police officers. And then also part of that resort tax is a property tax rebate to the citizens. So there's a really good effort to help not only the citizens but also the city to put the services on.
I wasn't aware of the resort tax. So, Can you give me an idea, for your peers who are listening that might be interested in applying? Give us the lay of the land, and Michael kind of touched on a little bit about the stability of the staff, but can you give us the lay of the land when it comes to the department heads, the proficiency level? What are there any challenges there? Any vacancies? Any expected vacancies or retirements coming? What can a city manager expect in their support staff if they take this position?
I think you can expect a good staff. We do have a new chief of police, but he's got 30 years experience that he brought from Washington. So he's really going to, I think, add some real value to the police department. It's a young police department, and so they need a strong leader with a lot of experience. And I think he's that person. Michael mentioned the city clerk. Yes, the city clerk's been here for 18 years, so she is able to really kind of keep things going. It's been my go-to person since I got here as far as getting a little history. The current public works director actually was the finance officer, and he was filling that role for about 4 years, and he moved over to public works. So I did just hire a new finance director, but again, she didn't come in with government experience, but she came in with a real background in banking and auditing. And then what's been nice, going back to Susan's actually been able to work with her to bring her up to speed on the government side.
Excellent.
Um, the fire chief's been here as a paid fire chief for about 4 years. He's been with the fire department for probably 20 years as a volunteer. Then we were also, with the resort tax, able to hire 3 full-time firefighters to augment the volunteer force.
Being in a resort community in a small town, fairly remote, there can be some challenges with hiring personnel and getting a labor force on board. Have you experienced that? Has the city been struggling with the ability to hire, maybe especially in the public safety realm, or is the resort tax really kind of offset that a little bit?
I think public safety realm has been fine. Again, though, what you're seeing is a lot of younger officers or younger individuals applying, but I think that's fine because again, we have a experienced police chief. Um, Finance officer, to get the right person took us a little while, but we did, and I'm really happy with the hire, and I think it's going to be really help the city in the long run. So yes, you're right. It is a little bit tough, but on the other hand, I mean, Kalispell is 15 miles, about 20 miles away. Whitefish is close. So there's a labor pool to pull from, but sometimes they might have to travel.
Got you.
Um,
Got you. In your time you've been there, have you identified any sort of things that maybe require immediate attention or reorganization or restructuring? What have you seen? Give us a look under the hood in the period of time you've been as the interim there.
well, as long as Susan was here, she really had, I think, a well-oiled machine. My thoughts are, as I came in, was that I met with the staff and I said, I'm the interim. I'm not here to make sweeping changes because that needs to be the permanent city manager. But then you look at it and you say, I'm not sure what sweeping changes need to be made. What I think is a new person has an opportunity to maybe bring some new thinking of how the position should be handled and things you might do that maybe Susan did differently. So it's not like there's any bleeding holes here. It's just that new management may bring some new ideas, and I've brought a few, but again, I don't want to make any big changes that's going to have an impact that I won't be able to follow through on.
Well, that kind of leads me into my next question: is what's been your sort of day-to-day interaction with the mayor and the governing body? I mean, how involved are they in the day-to-day operations and personnel and things of that sort of nature? Because small towns, any size government actually can get tricky depending on the personalities who are the elected officials. But what's that been like?
It's actually been great, and I think that goes back to Susan working with them so long that they understand their role as mayor and city councilors, and they don't bother the manager as far as trying to get in your business. Now, on the other hand, they'll stop by during the day and we'll talk, and the mayor and I probably meet at least a couple times a week, just to talk about what's going on and maybe any issues. But as far as getting in the middle of the city manager's business, I haven't experienced that at all.
Excellent, excellent. And I assume, like most small town managers, anyone taking this position should be expected to wear a lot of different hats. I assume.
Most definitely, and I think you need to come in, and I'm not saying you've got
This
to
is a
be.
working city manager
It
position.
is
Is what I'm
definitely
getting.
a working city manager position. Actually, I kind of laughed when I got here because the rest of the staff is, in the back office, and there was a plexiglass window, and I said, well, where's the city manager's office? They said, oh, it's in the hall. The door is right there in the hall. So I get to visit. I get to visit with everybody that's coming in for business. So, which is great. I mean, community members will stop in. A lot of them just stopped in and said, hi, welcome. Kind of what Michael said. I mean, it was a very welcoming community. I mean, I'm from Montana, been in Montana, but it's been a very welcoming community. So yeah, you got to wear a lot of hats. I don't think you have to be an expert in any particular area, as long as you can talk about it and be able to ask the right questions and then rely on the staff. I think that's exactly what we want to do.
Man, Mark, it's like you're reading my mind, because that leads into my next question. You having that Montana experience, and there's a decent chance, a really solid chance, that the next city manager may not even have lived in the state of Montana, let alone be in the Columbia Falls area. What should an outsider understand or expect when it comes to not just the community there, but also the state and local government dynamics?
Well, the community for sure is very supportive. Flathead County is, we're part of Flathead County, and there is, particularly in this area, Columbia Falls, Whitefish, and Kalispell all have city managers. So the city managers, we try to have a lunch about every couple months, and we talk about things that are going on and share notes. So that's very helpful. From the state perspective, we're getting ready for a legislative session, and so the Montana League of Cities and Towns is very engaged. They just had a meeting yesterday that's talking about legislative issues. They're working the legislative issues as we go through it. They will call and rely on the city managers to come and give testimony as appropriate to work through whatever issues that the legislature might think they need to take care of for the cities, which a lot of times we would say, you don't need to take care of anything for us, but that's just how legislatures work.
So many green flags, so many green flags in this conversation. It sounds like just a great opportunity. Hey, Mark, why don't we turn this over to the mayor, Donald Barnhart, and get him on the line, and we can get some of his thoughts. Mayor, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to spotlight the city manager recruitment and your beautiful community. Welcome to the podcast. Before we get into some of the more nitty gritty, I kind of want to go off of what I was just asking Mark a little bit. And Columbia Falls is your home. Obviously, you've been the mayor there for quite some time. I know you're passionate about your community. What makes you what are you most proud of when you think of Columbia Falls?
I think the people, the attitude of the people here. I was a small business owner for a long time here. I was born here, and we've still got that blue collar mentality. People are willing to help each other, and it's a great community to live in and raise your children here.
Awesome. And what do you think? And as I said a minute ago with Mark, high probability that the next city manager might not have lived in Montana ever before. What does somebody moving from outside the state need to really understand about your community, the people, the ethos?
Well, first is the weather, and we're actually in a banana belt, as far as I'm concerned, in Montana. We don't.
What is
We have a
what's the
little.
banana what's the banana belt mean?
We try to stay out of below zero as much as we can, and as the weather has changed, we have less blizzards, but it's pleasant here. It's warmer than most places in the state of Montana. The thing that you'd look forward to, I guess, is the small community, a lot of community involvement, and the folks here, it's been said before, very welcoming to people. We have a bunch of retired folks that worked in the industries here for many years, and they're the backbone of the community as far as I'm concerned. Now we have all the young families moving in, so it's a very diverse community and welcoming. I'm just very proud of saying I'm from here.
Oh well, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. Can you speak to sort of your tenure with the council and the stability of the council? How long you've been the mayor on the council, so forth and so on?
Oh, sure. I started working for the city quite honestly in 1979.
Oh wow. Okay.
I joined the volunteer fire department, and then 10 years later I was the chief. I was the chief for 10 years. During that time, when I transitioned out of chief position, I joined the city council for 7 years. After serving in the city council, I ran for mayor and was elected, and I think I've been here around 14 years.
Yeah.
It's just a pleasure. It's just an absolute pleasure to be able to work for the city of Columbia Falls and all the folks that live here.
And you had a phenomenal relationship with Susan Nicosia, correct? I read an article where you were very effusive with your praise, and I'm not sure if it was you or one of your peers. I guess you guys jokingly made a motion to not accept her retirement or resignation. So, but you've had a great relationship with your city manager, correct?
Oh yeah, she was a friend of mine, and she loved the city of Columbia Falls and just loved serving the city of Columbia Falls. And oftentimes we had to kind of pry her away and say, Susan, take some time with that family of yours. And she was just such an excellent person to be in the role of city manager. I worked with three city managers. The last two have been long tenure, Susan being the longest. Very professional. When I first started as a department head, we were transitioning from a mayor to a manager position. So I worked under both, and I must say that Susan was just such a joy, and we made a lot of decisions with mutual respect for each other. A lot of visits, and yeah, council just was devastated when she said, "I'm going to retire,"
Yeah.
and we're going, "Oh no! Now what are we going to do?" And it's been a trip, and we were so lucky that after a couple failed attempts, Mark came and was willing to serve, and Mark has just really stabilized everything. We're in very good shape right now.
Yeah, you guys seem like you are all around. Like I said, that's a lot of green flags here for this opportunity. When I was doing some research before the podcast, I went back and looked at the last couple election cycles. 5 of the current 7 members of the governing body have been on at least since I could find before 2021. I don't know how far back they all go. The last election cycle was in November of 2023. You guys have an odd year election cycle where a 6-member council with the mayor, so 7 members total. And last go around, you had 3 council members up, and 2 of them retained their seats, I believe. And then I assume in 2025, is it the other 3 council members plus your spot is up for election? Is that how that works?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that's correct. And we elected one new council member, and she replaced a 12-year member who was a local businessman.
Yeah.
So she's the newest one here. On that note, I would say that 5 of the 7 of us were actually born in Columbia Falls.
Oh, wow.
We
Okay.
we, we have Columbia Falls in our blood, So we're very focused on serving the people of our community.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing too, for those who might not be aware, for it might surprise some folks, is you have 4 members of your governing body are female, and you also had the city manager, long-serving city manager and former elected official, female as well. So clearly, women who are listening to this podcast shouldn't be put off by any concerns about having a chance in the great city of Columbia Falls.
We're so open to whatever it does. Person's qualifications and personality are what we're looking for. Gender really has nothing to do with our hiring.
Well, that leads right into my next question. What type of personality or character traits do you envision the next city manager having or needing to have in order to be successful with you and the governing body in your community?
Well, I think one of them is Susan had what she called an open door policy, and in other words, people come into City Hall, and if they need to speak to the manager, if she was available, would make time at that time. So very personable, willing to listen to the concerns of the community members, open to meeting and discussing items with all the council members, and able to interact with the community in various organizations around here, and actually getting really involved in the community. And I think it's an opportunity. The opportunity is here to do that. We hang together doing things, whether it's sports or supporting our schools. We pass school levies. We built a couple new schools lately, and so yeah, I think if you can come in and manage and take care of the incredible team we have here, I think you'd be more than welcome and fulfill our goals that we would have for our city in the future.
So I get the sense that you, like you said, blue collar, not a lot of pretentiousness, not a lot of fluff in your community. You basically, right? Straight shooters, right? Direct talkers, that kind of deal.
Oh, you're exactly right. This community was called the industrial hub of the Flathead Valley for most of my life. We had 5 lumber mills, 1,200 people working in aluminum reduction works just outside of town. The folks here were very down to earth, blue collar. Since that time, those industries have pretty much closed. We're down to one sawmill. The reduction plant is gone and in the process of doing a cleanup. But that core people are still here. Now it's turned in more of a bedroom community, quite honestly, and younger families, when they can afford it, are moving here and enjoying our schools. And it's a close commute for everybody. It's 8 miles to Whitefish to work there, or like 16 miles to Kalispell. So there's a lot of that going on. Also, folks work up in Glacier Park from here. That's a real short commute also. So yeah, it's kind of turned into a bedroom community, I guess you could call that, and a resort community, obviously.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So when you're straight shooters and you have direct talk, sometimes you can butt heads and there can be some conflict. How does the governing body that you've worked with, how do you guys handle conflict or disagreements? Are you guys able to disagree while being agreeable, so to speak?
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny. Most about 95% of our votes are unanimous. Quite honestly, we've talked it out prior when we can, and the only real contentious things that we've had have been land use and zoning and subdivisions that were influenced by people outside of the city not wanting to see growth in their areas. And certainly we share ideas, we share our backgrounds and our thoughts, but we like you said, we can agree to disagree and move on for the what's best for the citizens of Columbia Falls.
Is that one of the biggest issues facing your communities? Maybe that typical growth, no growth debate, or is that a fair representation? Or what would you say are some of the major political issues that sort of create some division or fracture in the community that a city manager might want to be aware of?
Yeah, we went through it. We went through a time when we had some large subdivisions proposed on the outskirts of town that were met by a lot of people who weren't happy with it. And those were folks from out of town, from our surrounding area. They didn't want to see the growth move into their community, into their areas. And we went through all that. We weighed all the questions, looked at all the facts, and as it turned out, those are one of them we might have had a split vote on, and those, after looking at the facts, we decided to decline allowing those subdivisions. We're very cognizant of state law on land use. We've been so lucky to have great great city attorneys that their job is to see that we stay out of trouble and that we follow the law. So we've been very lucky with that, and oftentimes certain people aren't happy with the fact that we are following the law, but that's what we're charged with, and we do not stick our foot in it. We stay in the clear.
Are there any other issues or topics that have kind of reared their head of late, or something that maybe a future city manager might want to be aware of, or is that pretty much the main source of conflict?
No, as far as conflict, I don't see any. I don't see any upcoming. I think we're on a smooth path. I think once we did our resort tax, which is just a wonderful thing that so many communities wish they could have done. As soon as Nicosia got that, you had to be less than 5,500 for a population to make that work. We just got in under the line.
You sure did, because you guys might be over that number now, right?
We are. Our next, yeah, the next census, like 6 months later, was 5,600.
Wow.
So yeah, so we got that, but we're rebating 25% of that resort tax, and in the last year, last year, we were 1.5 million total. 25% of that went back to the homeowners of the city. So I think we're keeping people happy. We're trying to reimburse them for what it may cost them in that resort tax in their purchases around town, and it's a luxury tax. It's not on groceries and clothes.
Gotcha.
It's a luxury tax, but it's allowed us so much leeway in funding the things that the other communities around are struggling with, as far as police protection, especially fire protection, and keeping the onus of that off of the property owners as much as we possibly can. So I think people are pretty happy with this. I don't see any pitchforks and torches coming to City Hall.
That's
So,
music to my ears.
yeah, absolutely, and mine also.
So, Mayor, in light of that, what would you say are like the day one, immediate goals and objectives of the incoming city manager? What do you expect him or her to focus on? What's going to be on their agenda, in your opinion?
Oh, I think integration with the staff. I think integration with the staff, understanding our staff. We have a wonderful staff, long term, all long term, understanding how our city relates. If they're from out of this state, they're going to have to understand how we relate to Montana code, because that's our governing book is Montana code annotated, and they're going to have to get in line with that. We've got wonderful resources here between Mark and Susan, who again is on contract to help. So to really ease somebody into this, I think that what they're going to find is full support from the council. We are going to be, when we make this decision, this choice, you're going to see that it is going to be 100%. And we're looking forward to getting another long-term manager that'll be a part of our community.
Sounds like it. Sounds like it. And I don't mean this in any way of a negative or anything like that. But when I'm hearing you speak, it sounds to me not that you don't want a fresh set of eyes, and not that you're afraid of some change, but it doesn't really sound to me like you're looking for someone who's going to come in and try to upset the apple cart. Like you feel like, hey, things are going pretty good right now. We just need to keep that humming along because we have a great team. We've had a great history of leadership, and we just want to keep it moving that direction. Is that a fair representation?
That is, and just for instance, when Mark came in, he instituted a few changes in how we look at items before the council. Totally great moves. I think some fresh eyes, as you put it, on this, and bringing in ideas from past experience is a wonderful idea. And of course, anything that improves our efficiency, the operation of the city council is 100% behind. So.
Awesome. So Mayor, as Mark alluded to earlier, he explained that you and council members may be present at City Hall, but you're not necessarily gumming up the works or meddling in operations and personnel decisions. I just want to put you on the spot. Can you attest to that and concur with that statement, or what's your day-to-day sort of routine like when it comes to your interaction with the city manager and staff?
Oh no, that's exactly right. I was a small business owner in town here. I had an excavation business for many years, so I worked side by side with Public Works and, quite honestly, several other departments. And I was also part of the fire department, which was here. But it's been totally understood from the beginning that the manager works for us, and we can certainly visit with our manager, with our other employees, and that's good. You want to be able to visit, but there's no direction or anything ever coming from a member of this council, and that's always been pointed out. Just when you join this council, which doesn't happen very often, like you said, we have a long-term relationship with our counselors. You're certainly schooled in that. We leave, if we have any issues at all, we come directly to the manager. You just go to the manager. He's the only employee this council has, and we all understand that, and we follow that rule.
That's amazing, and especially hearing that. Not only do you talk about your small business experience, but the fact that you've also been with the organization for so long, the city for so long, in so many different capacities, both as an elected official and as an employee. So, like, I know that when you say that, it's a sincere statement, not just lip service to the idea of the council manager form of government.
No, that's absolutely correct. And as far as my service to the city of Columbia Falls since '79, my father prior to me was a mayor in 1971. So, and he owned the same business I owned, and he was a part of that. I watched him work through that, and he was a city council member, and he was also a member of the fire department. So I don't know if I follow his footsteps, but it's just a pure love of this city and the folks that live here that we work towards.
My final question for you, sir, is I follow the comings and goings of city managers and county managers across the country on a daily basis. And one of the most common issues that I see arise that creates consternation or frustration or just incompatibility is the inability for the manager and the council to communicate effectively. Either they're just not on the same page as far as what constitutes effective communication or consistent communication or effective communication. Can you speak to what your expectations are on the communication front when it comes, and what your governing body's expectations are with the communication with the city manager, and how the city manager should communicate with you guys, and frequency and just style?
Oh, sure. I think anything of importance that the council needs to be aware of between our council meetings, emails are wonderful. That's our main, and also just the ability to stop in and visit and keep up with the manager has going forward, and any issues that he or she may have as far as requesting help or opinions from any council members. So, also, our city council meetings are pretty tame. We obviously have some folks that like to come and address the council. We don't have a large audience, which I'm sorry for. I would love more people to come and do it, but when you don't cause waves, they have a tendency to stay away, and you know that
Yeah, I
from
mean, well, when,
experience.
when things are running well, people are happy, and there's not. I mean, human beings respond when they're upset or irritated. That's just generally how it works. That's just human nature. So
They
if you,
are.
yeah,
And as far as communication, at that time, a good good report from the city manager, delving into whatever's coming up, what we're doing presently, and asking any questions of the council. But also our local newspaper is here, and quite honestly, that's how we get most of our news out
yeah.
of what we're doing at the council. We don't make headlines anywhere, which is funny. We just don't. We're the ones that the other two cities will get a headline once in a while in the local newspaper. Columbia Falls doesn't. We just take care of business, and that report from the manager at our bi-monthly meetings is very important to getting at it. So a good, concise report and able to answer the questions and concerns of the council is important.
I'm belaboring the point, I guess, but I think when you look at the consistency of the members of the city council, the governing body, how stable it's been, the tenure of the previous city manager, the history and experience that you've had, and others with the organization, just a long tenure has been alluded to in this interview by all three individuals. Obviously you guys are doing something right? I mean, because clearly if the people weren't happy, there'd be a lot of change going on at the ballot box or in other forms. So I think that's a testament to a well-run community, well-run city, and man, I just think this is an excellent opportunity. Michael, we'll get you back in here to wrap up this episode. I, I don't know how you're not going to have people. Honestly, the only negative I see about this job, Michael, is those 0 degree temperatures. You know what I mean? Like this, I think you're gonna have a massive crop of candidates wanting to apply for this position.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We're really excited about recruiting for this community, and as you know, as we start doing more and more national recruitments, and really appreciate the trust that the mayor and city council gave to clear career professionals. But yeah, our biggest recruitment, Joe, we did an assistant city manager recruitment for Fair Oaks Ranch down outside of the San Antonio area, and we got 174 candidates for that one. And so, I think Columbia Falls is equally an amazing place. When I got there and spent a couple days in the city with the team and the citizens up there, it's just a place where I would really love to work. And I think that naturally the candidates are going to see that. And being a Colorado guy originally myself, I understand the cold weather, but when you walk out your door and surrounded by mountains and all that's there, I say bring some firewood with you and really enjoy the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mayor, I don't blow smoke, and I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. I think you've done a really good job of articulating what type of community you are and what you're looking for, and I really hope that you get somebody of the caliber and personality and character that you're looking for, so you can continue this tradition of having stable leadership.
Uh, Thank you so much, and for allowing us to take part in your podcast. And working with Michael has just been a joy. He's just so spot on. He's right up to speed with everything. He's put things into motion that we hawed around for quite some time. We tried twice, didn't work. So we're going to the professional, and we are so happy to have him on board again. Joe, thank you for allowing me.
So Michael, as we wrap up, is there any final bookkeeping items or housekeeping items we need to take care of with regard to this recruitment? Any logistical, technical issues?
No, not at all. I think that hopefully people will see this listed on the typical job posting boards, and certainly it'll be listed in Montana, but also we will post a job on our LinkedIn and our website, and we really love the LinkedIn community as far as getting the followers to see the opportunities that are out there. But we do a lot of direct recruitment, Joe. So we'll be reaching out to a lot of folks and encourage them to apply as well. And the thing that we really like to do is be impactful for communities. So the greatest thing of being a recruiting agency and consulting firm is when you look at a community and you see them thriving and you're a small part of that. I think that's kind of our legacy, and it really helps the people who are involved with our company feel like we're still being impactful in a good way. And so everything we do is hoping to build value for these communities. But yeah, this job hopefully will be a really great outcome. And like I said, we'll be really focusing on getting as many good candidates as we can through the month of January. And so I just encourage people to apply and potentially be a part of this amazing venture up in Columbia Falls.
Excellent, absolutely. And again, thank you to you and the mayor for giving me this opportunity to do something different. To my knowledge, this is the first ever podcast that's been dedicated to advertising a city manager vacancy. I'm really excited about that and doing something different and kind of changing the paradigm of recruitment, public sector executive recruitment. And I hope the audience who's listening, those who are considering the position, have felt like they've gotten some value from this whole experience. If you are a candidate and you like what I'm doing here, I'd appreciate it if you left me some notes or comments or suggested questions for future interviews. If you are listening and you have a city manager recruitment, if you're an HR director or elected official, or if you're another recruitment firm and you're looking to do a city manager recruitment, please reach out and let's talk about how we can spotlight your recruitment for my audience. I think what's really great about getting on the podcast, beyond just the comprehensive 360-degree in-depth examination of the recruitment, is it's reaching out to some of those passive candidates who are not necessarily searching the job boards and what have you. So, one other thing too, if you are a city manager looking to feel like an assistant city manager spot, let me know. Maybe come on here and talk about that recruitment as well. So thank you, gentlemen, for your time. I'm really excited to see where this goes. I'm really excited to see what your crop of candidates looks like and who you guys end up with. I think you guys are going to have a really good outcome as a result of these efforts. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks again, Joe. I appreciate it. And Michael.
Thanks, Joe. You guys take care. Mayor, it's good seeing you.
All right, I'm Joe Turner. This is the City Manager Unfiltered Podcast, a podcast for city managers and other public sector executives. If you like the content, if you like what we're doing here, please hit that follow, subscribe button on your platform of choice. Let me know what you think. It's something different. I want to keep on doing it. Let me know if I should. Catch you next week.